AI doesn't build relationships. AI doesn't tell a story unprompted. AI doesn't establish emotional connection. All these things that are still necessary in our day-to-day, but it can help you be able to gather new insights. It can help you distill information. It can make you more efficient. It can make you more effective. I don't think it takes away from any sort of like authenticity, but it can certainly expand output and scale that.
I'm Michael Mogill, founder and CEO of Crisp, the nation's #1 law firm growth company. I've built my business through practice, not theory. Crisp started with just $500 to my name and has grown to over 8 figures in revenue over the last few years, earning a spot on the Inc. 500 list of the fastest growing private companies in America. Our approach has been to take everything we've learned about generating massive growth within our own organization and help the country's most ambitious and committed law firm owners do the same for theirs. In each episode of this podcast, I sit down with innovative market leaders from the legal industry and beyond to learn from those who thrive in the face of adversity, challenge the status quo, and define what it means to be a true game changer.
This is Jessica, Head of Coaching Strategy at Crisp, and today we're flipping the script for another special edition episode to get Michael's take on cutting through the noise to identify AI solutions that truly make an impact, harnessing AI while preserving the unique strengths of your firm, and how law firms can future-proof their business and turn AI into a strategic advantage.
We're going to see smaller firms be able to do more with less. You won't require as much headcount or staff because of the efficiencies created by the support you'll gain with AI and AI assistants. But on the converse of that, I look at it and say, that doesn't necessarily mean that there's going to be less lawyers or less people. I just think because you're able to do more with less, you'll also be able to do more with more.
That's coming up on the Game Changing Attorney podcast. Here we are, Michael, your favorite day.
It's a day for an AMA, and I'm excited because, Jessica, you actually gave me a bit of a sneak peek that we're going to be talking about artificial intelligence today, AI. And when you told me this, I was fascinated because there's nothing better than seeing billionaires compete with each other. Okay?
So true.
It is a level of competition that is just fascinating to watch, of just trying to see them one-up one another. And at least at the time of this podcast recording, right, we're seeing a new and improved AI model coming out almost every week or every other week, right? Like the pace of innovation that's taking place in AI it's almost like every single month this year represents the progress that was made last year, right? So it's incredibly fascinating, and it's amazing in the sense that, obviously ChatGPT comes out with the model, and then Chinese guys come out with DeepSeek, and they're like, hey, we can do it with a smaller team. And then Elon builds this massive data center, right? And he comes out with Grok 3 and says, hey, we have used like hundreds of thousands of GPUs, and it is the most powerful AI model yet. Then there's Anthropic on the other end with Claude saying that like we're coming out with the new reasoning model. And then Google's doing their thing with Gemini. And then ChatGPT's like, we've been playing around with ChatGPT 4.5, and we're getting dangerously close to AGI, which is essentially like artificial general intelligence, where it just essentially is iRobot, right?
Yeah.
But then you got Satya Nadella, who's the CEO of Microsoft. He comes out and says, you know what? We just created the world's first quantum computing chip, and have discovered a new state of matter. So you got like solid liquid gas.
Yeah.
And he says, you know what? I'm not even that. I don't know if I even believe in AGI. In fact, I'm not interested in anything that doesn't improve the world's productivity by at least 10%. So you see this, and it's exciting because there's a lot of people that are going to benefit from this. I think the entire world is going to benefit from this. But seeing the pace of innovation, which people are able to just move resources, the amount of creativity, quite frankly, the intelligence and the pace at which human beings are getting things done, and then you expedite that, and actually it becomes an exponential effect because the AI itself is also powering a lot of these like developments and the models themselves. Mm-hmm. So it's like this learning model that gets better continuously over time, and now they're solving the compute issue, and then they're saying, okay, you know what, now it requires a lot of energy and resources.
Right.
So why don't we just build a nuclear power plant right next to the data center, and it will provide the energy and resources. And it was actually fascinating hearing how Elon explained what they did with Grok 3 because of the power needs of the model itself. So they were able to solve for the power, but then the challenge came into the actual delivery of the power itself, because they couldn't have fluctuations. So then he's like, well, we called my boys over at Tesla, right? And we got these mega packs that we use to power countries. And we were able to rewrite the code so that it would have consistent power delivery. and he just leveraged the technology of another $1 trillion company, right? So that's just fascinating to see.
Yeah, it's mind-blowing. It's really a lot to keep up with.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So whenever you think you've got problems and challenges, just know that there's other human beings on this earth doing that. And the only thing they're interested in is, well, if it doesn't improve the world's productivity by 10%, if it doesn't make the world 10% better, we're not even interested in talking about it.
Yeah. It should give everyone a nice kick in the butt of speeding up timelines on everything that they do.
It's an exciting future.
Yeah.
So before we get into the questions themselves, you guys are listening to the AMMA, where you submit the questions and you text us at 404-531-7691. I got some really fun texts this week. So maybe some of those questions will show up on the AMMA this week. But if you have not tuned into the podcast before, we have 3 types of episodes. We've got the AMMAs, which you're listening to. We've got the interview format, and we bring on a guest, ask them questions, kind of probably a type of podcast you're familiar with. And then the encore editions, we bring back some of the most popular episodes. And the best part is, the very best part of this whole thing that we do here is that we don't run any ads and we don't have any sponsors. We get offered them, but we politely decline because we want to be able to offer this podcast for free and uncensored, and ultimately be able to bring on the guests that we want and be able to say the things that we want. And I find that when you take $1, you got to be very careful about what you say.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be very careful about what I say on our own podcast.
Yeah.
So if you love it, great. You can actually help us out. You can help us out for free. You can help us out right now if you go leave us a review on the podcast, like a 5-star review, whether it's on Apple Podcasts or Amazon Music or on Spotify, wherever it is that you're listening. If you leave a review, this helps the podcast ultimately grow and continue to grow in credibility, helps us get great guests on the show, and it helps us reach other leaders like yourself and provide them valuable insights. So Jessica, what do we have this week? What are we talking about? I know we're talking about AI, but what are some of the questions?
All right, Michael, you said it. We are doing AI today, so one of your favorite topics. We will jump right in. So question number 1, AI is everywhere, and I know I need to adapt. But every day there's a new tool and a new prediction. I just feel like I can't keep up. How do I know what's actually worth my time and what's just noise? This is a lot of people right now.
I think the best way to find out what's worth your time is to just experiment and just be curious and really try out these different AI models and AI tools and platforms, because the question of asking, is something worth your time, really comes down to what are the different use cases in which you would benefit from leveraging something like AI, right? Like AI is really great for research. It's really great for analysis. It's really great for any sort of like writing, sometimes content creation to some extent, right? Ideation maybe, but you're not going to find out how it's useful to you until you start experimenting with it, right? And there's not going to be some moment, or I imagine there will be, perhaps a bit into the future, but by this point you're going to be at a severe competitive disadvantage where someone tells you, you're almost like it's forced upon you.
Mm-hmm.
So for now, you can use it to gain a competitive edge. And you can try different models. Like you can go use ChatGPT, it's free, right? You could try Gemini from Google. You can try Claude from Anthropic. I found it better from a writing standpoint. A lot of the ChatGPT models are very good from a reasoning standpoint. Grok, the one from X AI, that one's also, we just used that recently. It's great. DeepSeek, also free and open source. And just play around with it. Just start asking questions, because you'll find that the real competency to develop is this new, like what I would consider the new programming language, which is really prompting, right? Of being able to, how do you actually extract value from these different tools and resources? And as you start to utilize them more and experiment with them more, you go in there and look, just ask a question. You could even ask a question like saying, hey, let me give you some context about my life, and knowing what you know, what advice would 85-year-old me give to present me about ways in which I could achieve X, Y, and Z, right? See what it says. And then you can have this conversation back and forth. Or you can upload certain data and say, hey, can you perform data analysis and identify like what variables are driving the impact of X, Y, and Z, and you define the fields and so on. Mm-hmm. And if that sounds complex to you, all right, just get started. Like you just start asking it things, or consolidate research on this particular topic, pull out these types of insights, identify where it could be, potential blind spots, for law firm owners or people like me in my specific practice area, et cetera, and help me define this strategy and develop this strategy. You could do all sorts of things, and then you can take those same questions and you can put them into different models and see what responses you get. And then the other thing that I think is fascinating in some of the models, like DeepSeek is one and Grok is another, it actually shows you how it does the thinking and how it evaluates the actual prompt itself. Like, so if you ask a question, I asked it just because sometimes I'll mess around and I'll say, hey, rank the top 10 Call of Duty games and why, right? And in Grok, it would say, okay, well, so he's asking me this question, so how could I actually rank the top 10? So we could start by evaluating like the critical reception of these, right? How like they were ranked in reviews. Then we can evaluate how they did in terms of sales. Then we can actually look at, because they had single player campaigns, and we can evaluate those and the narrative of that. And then also the multiplayer in terms of overall player engagement, right? And then we can look at what happened post-launch in terms of post-launch support, and then how it is viewed today by active players. And then based on that, it just like went through this whole thing, and I'm like, fascinating, right?
Yeah.
So that's what a lot of these models are doing. And look, and there's other tools. There's a lot of software out there that can do great research for you. It can create demand letters for you, etc. Just try the stuff out. It's not perfect. I mean, there's going to be hallucinations with a lot of AI, but it continues to get better and it continues to improve. So in terms of being able to differentiate what is going to be valuable to you versus what is just noise, it's try it out. I mean, you can literally try out a model for 20 minutes and see, okay, well, this is useful, and I can, this I'll keep. And you can try out something else. Like I've seen people use, certain AI models to generate images or to generate certain types of content. And it seems good in theory, but they're like, yeah, but I don't really like what it outputted. They later abandon it. It's just not valuable. You just try it out. Most of the stuff isn't going to make it, right? Like, and also it really comes down to like your comfort within a particular platform. So if you're using some sort of prompting platform, it's really about the wrapper itself, which is the outer lining of it, the user experience, if you will. The models themselves are going to be able to switch out. And I think over time, they're already somewhat commoditized. So right now, for let's say someone who's doing AI prompting, you're having to select the model and you're saying, okay, well, should I use, ChatGPT 4.0 or should I use DeepSeek or whatever? And each of the different models has different benefits. But what we're really moving to is based on the question you ask, it will select the right model for that type of question. So if you're going to ask it to develop an app or to code a website, for example, that's going to use a model that's more geared towards, coding. And if you're going to ask for it to write a novel, for example, that's going to use a model that's, that's varying in reasoning, right? So, but what you're going to see on the front end is you're just going to ask the questions and you're just going to do the prompting and the interaction. It's also, you don't even have to type questions now. You can even use voice. You can go back and forth in terms of asking it things. So you just have to be curious. I mean, is there anything you want to add on this?
I think one thing that even just started was how do you start? But it's like, what would you normally Google? And just put it in ChatGPT. I remember when the girls were sick and we're like, okay, we have questions about the flu. We didn't Google anything. We'd actually just put it in ChatGPT. And so that would be an easy switch of, if you are like, where do I even start? Just take something as simple as that.
I don't Google anything anymore.
Right. That's what I'm saying.
I don't know many people who do, because the challenge with Google is that there's just a lot of like friction points. Like you have to search for something, then you hope that whatever comes up is going to be relevant to you and that it answers your question, but you got to like find the answer as well, versus just asking the question with one of the AI tools.
Yeah.
And this is a recent example even. So some of the people listening may know that I'm up early in the morning, 5 a.m., walking on a treadmill, and I'm usually walking 6 to 8 miles in a weighted vest, right? And I've been doing this now for the last few years. So I get a lot of steps in, and while I'm walking, I'm getting my steps. I'm also doing some online first-person shooters. I started to experience some neck pain, right? And I'm like, man, why is my neck hurting? After about an hour, right? It would start to hurt. So I ask in ChatGPT, I'm like, let me give you the context for this.
Yep.
Right? I'm walking on a treadmill. I've got a desk there with a monitor on it, right? I'm wearing a headset on my head, and I'm wearing a weighted vest that's about 10 pounds. And the pain starts to kick in at around like an hour. But then as soon as I hop off, it's not like, it vanishes, right? I don't feel it throughout the day or whatever. But I didn't have this for the last like 2 years, and nothing's changed. So why now? So by the way, if I went to an occupational therapist, the first thing they'd say is, man, don't do any of that. It's absolutely not even safe to do it, okay? AI is like, all right, so here are the things that it could be. Could be an ergonomics issue. So we can check the height of the monitor and making sure that like it's eye level to the top, third of the monitor. So you may have to like adjust the height up or down. Then they said, okay, well, it could also be, I forget what they called it. It's like when you front pronate your neck, right? So it could be like a posture issue, for example. And then the third thing could be just like a musculoskeletal issue in terms of like strengthening neck muscles. What I recommended is, okay, first check the monitor. That's probably going to be the easiest thing in terms of making it eye level, right? And then in terms of the posture, because I asked them, like, what do I do about these things? It's like, okay, well, here are the exercises that you can do for posture, but then you can also buy this device, and you can essentially wear it as a necklace, and it will vibrate whenever your posture's off. So I'm like, cool, Amazon, done, right? And then in addition to like the exercise itself, it would say like, do these things, these chin tucks, essentially 10 times, twice a day, and hold for 20 seconds. That's like awesome, right? Like what article, like what I Google search to give me these insights and then go back and forth. It lays out all the exercises, the frequency at which you can do them. I mean, it's really helped from a pain standpoint. My brother's a physical therapist, so I asked him this stuff, and I asked him the same question. I asked a human being the same question.
It depends.
He said it depends. I'm like, all right, well, AI really helped me out here.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's just an example. And I've heard, look, people plan their trips.
Oh, yeah.
And sometimes, they'll go somewhere with their kids, and they'll say, look, I've got one child who has these food allergies. I got another child who only eats X, Y, and Z. We're going to this city in this state. What would be some restaurants or places we could eat that would align with these dietary restrictions? And at the same time, what would be, we want to make sure that it's close to attractions or things that are family friendly that we could do with the family that's walking distance from this hotel. And in fact, find us a hotel, and we typically like hotels that have like X, Y, and Z preferences and have some sort of, experience for families. Done. We'll figure that out for you real quick 5 seconds later. So as you start integrating this stuff, you start to see it as, true integration is the word. But it all starts with curiosity, because I didn't know that it could do the things that it did until I started just asking and saying, okay, what's the worst thing it's going to say? I can't help you with that. But it's fascinating just how good it's getting and how valuable it is with pretty much anything. And if I have questions about anything at all, sometimes I'm sitting on the couch and I'm thinking, I wonder why that's the way that it is, right? Like, or explain this to me like I'm 5 years old, right? Like some topic that I don't know anything about. Or give me the perspective of this from, let's say, someone who's left-leaning versus someone who's right-leaning, and like, why would someone believe this and why would someone believe that? And it's fascinating. It's the future is now sort of thing.
Absolutely.
So we've been on this one a while,
I know.
You just got to be curious.
Yeah, just get started.
Yeah.
All right. So question number 2. I know AI can do so much, but I'm starting to see so much AI content, images, and work. I'm not fighting AI, but I also don't want to lose the things that make my firm unique and put generic AI stuff out there. How do you determine what to use AI for versus keep human-driven?
I mean, very similar to what we just talked about. Like, what do you use AI for? What do you use to be human-driven? I think AI is really good for any aggregation or collection of information and anything that is very transactional in nature, any sort of research, even in terms of just helping you identify certain blind spots, for example. But when we talk about content, I think AI could be helpful for certain types of content in terms of it could give you ideas for how to draft certain blog posts or writing things in a way that are SEO optimized, right? Absolutely, you can put out content. But as we start to see more and more AI content, you can tell, right? So for example, when we have people apply for roles here at CRISP and they're doing test assignments, I can tell when that's an AI test assignment, right? When they're answering questions and it's by AI, because it's just a certain cadence to it, right? What it looks like. And then sometimes it can even go wrong. Like, going back to Call of Duty, they had when you load up the game, there's like a featured screen and it's like some screenshot. And we could tell it was completely an AI screenshot. Like it became a joke in the Call of Duty community because there was a zombie that had 6 fingers, right?
Right.
And they're like, okay, obviously that was AI generated. And people will use it, I think, to save time. But you have to realize also that the AI is good, but you still need the human to ensure that there's quality control, that there's refinement in place. I look at it as AI, the goal of it is to move people from doing, let's say human beings, from doing very repetitive transactional work to being able to focus on more strategic work, to where like you're adding true value. And if the way that you're adding value is by doing the same thing every single day or compiling information or data entry or something like that, then, I mean, that's just not what the future of work is. We're moving away from that. I think human beings can offer incredible insight. I mean, here's what AI doesn't do. AI doesn't build relationships. AI doesn't tell a story unprompted. AI doesn't establish emotional connection. Like all these things that are still necessary to, in our day-to-day, but it can help you be able to gather new insights. It can help you distill information. It can make you more efficient. It can make you more effective. I don't think it takes away from any sort of like authenticity, but it can certainly expand output, like and scale that.
Yeah, I think this is a great place to say that it's not that AI will replace people, but the people using AI are going to replace the people not using AI.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it's no different if you look back in history where the internet comes out,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And even personal computers. And there's people that were resistant to that. There were just people who's held on. The story of Crisp, right? At the very early days of Crisp, when I started the company, this was around the time of people moving from film cameras to digital cameras, like DSLRs. And these represented an opportunity to, not only was it more cost effective, but it was also much more nimble. And you had an opportunity to now, you didn't have to rely on film, so you could shoot a ton of footage and you could use memory cards and you could delete it and you could just essentially experiment a lot more. You weren't tied to, I only have like this much tape that I can use. The cameras themselves weren't as bulky. You didn't have to have like this massive production crew on a set. So it made it much more cost effective to create content and do videos. And I remember when I was starting Crisp, we went DSLRs from the start, like the digital. But there were so many purists that were saying, we're not going to go to digital. For no other reason, honestly, than they didn't like it, right?
Yeah.
They didn't like change. They didn't like the idea of change, right? But now that's what everybody does.
Right.
And those that were the purists held it on, I mean, they're probably not in this space anymore.
Correct.
Right? They're probably not shooting content anymore because they weren't able to survive.
Yeah.
So it's no different saying that, like, I'm going to stick to a typewriter, even though you have laptops and PCs that are out now, or say, look, I'm just not going to use the internet, right? So you have this opportunity to get on-demand information about anything that's ever been created ever, right? And you're going to say, no, I'm not going to participate. With AI, it's very similar, and it's not a fad. It's not one of those things. I mean, there's immense value that you can gain, but again, like you said, it's not the AI that's going to replace you. It's the it's the other lawyers that are using AI.
Exactly. All right. And that will bring us to question number 3. So AI is automating more of the legal process every day. With this level of efficiency, will law firms still need the same number of attorneys and staff in the future, or are we headed toward a world with fewer lawyers?
Ooh,
Great transition
the
there.
doomsday question, right? So if AI going to replace us, I mean, it's certainly going to replace certain roles. It's certainly going to replace certain types of work. Are we going to see fewer lawyers? Maybe, maybe not. I mean, who knows, right? And who knows what timescale we're even talking about. But I will say the short answer is yes, right? Yes. And I say this because we're going to see smaller firms be able to do more with less. Like, you won't require as much headcount or staff because of the efficiencies created by, the support you'll gain with AI and AI assistance, right? But on the converse of that, on the other side of that coin, I look at it and say, that doesn't necessarily mean that there's going to be less lawyers or less people. I just think because you're able to do more with less, you'll also be able to do more with more. So there's the side of it that says, like, we'll be able to run leaner and be more efficient and effective. If everybody that you have is leveraging AI, then you'll be able to be even more effective and you'll have greater output. So you'll want more of that.
Right.
Right. So it's looking at it from the standpoint of are you trying to be as lean and small as possible, or if you have incredible talent that thinks strategically and leverages AI, the amount of impact that you're going to make is also going to become exponential. So it goes both ways. But what we're going to get away from is any sort of transactional work. If all you do is send emails back and forth, or if all you do is just create documents or draft documents, that sort of stuff, that's going to be a very hard life for you, right? Because that type of work is going by the wayside. But when I think about strategic work, so if you are doing any sort of like litigation, right? Any sort of trial work, that sort of stuff, that's going to be very valued, right? Human beings, we will still be focusing on that. But if it's anything where it's just the aggregation of information, or you're just compiling something and presenting something to somebody else, it's tough to say, because that's not what value is in the future. Value is your ability to be able to take the specialized experience that you have and then be able to apply that in a way like high stakes litigation. I think that's always going to be human driven, for sure. Being able to evaluate and debate regulations, human driven, for sure. Compiling reports, writing demand letters and drafting that stuff, nope, no way, right? Drafting contracts, drafting documents, those sort of things, probably not, right? Negotiations, yes, right? So it's just moving from work that is less strategic to work that is more strategic, things that I think human beings can add more value to. And a lot of the stuff that is more repetitive in nature, that is perhaps, I say respectfully, like lower value work, right? That is going to become much more efficient and automated and probably AI supported, but it's also going to create a lot of opportunity for people on lower incomes to have access to broader legal services that may be out of reach for them.
Right.
So just move to where like true value is. And you know what true value is. True value, this is going to be controversial. Ready? True value is not going back and forth in an email thread with an insurance company and saying that, okay, well, they offered this much and we're going to come back and say, no, offer us this much. Because they already know the maximum amount they're going to pay you. And they know because they have leveraged AI and they have data that shows exactly what the amount you're probably going to take is and whether you will actually go to trial based on your prior history of going to trial. And if you did go to trial, what is your success rate and what is the likelihood that it would exceed what they would offer you? So they already know what they're going to pay you. So this charade of going back and forth and saying, I'm fighting for my client because I'm sending emails back and forth. And like, I didn't like the number. So we emailed them, some stern email and they came back with a higher one. That isn't value work, okay? Because the person on the other end already knows what they're going to do. They're just engaging in this back and forth with you because you won't finally accept it unless there is a back and forth enough time so that you feel that you can justify to your client the value was created because you went back and forth with somebody. Harsh truth.
It is.
Fight me on it. If you don't like it, text me 404-531-7691. Tell me your thoughts. Tell me why I'm wrong. Seriously, tell me why I'm wrong. No. And if I'm wrong, and you present a good enough case, I will come on the next AMA and say, I said this X, Y, and Z, the stuff that I just said. And here's why I learned that I am wrong if I'm wrong. But if you don't like it, well, just realize that it doesn't matter what I think. What matters is that type of work can be replaced by AI. And the sooner you realize that, the sooner you start transitioning to more strategic work.
Exactly. All right. That'll round us out today. Go challenge Michael.
All right.
You've been listening to the Game Changing Attorney podcast with Michael Mogill. If you found this episode valuable, here are 3 free ways that we can help you grow your law firm. Number 1, download the first chapter of Michael's book absolutely free at gamechangingattorney.com. Number 2, you can shoot Michael a text at 404-531-7691 and ask him any question you'd like. You might just hear the answer on the next episode. And finally, number 3, if you can leave this podcast a 5-star review, it will help us gain access to more influential thought leaders and bring their lessons learned here to you. For more information on this episode, see the show notes in your podcast app or visit legalpodcast.com.